Okay, I'm going to talk about patterned geometry. So there's a couple ways we can approach this. This one that I'm working on right here is based off of this piece right here, right? So this one has a lot of radial topology to it, from this grid pattern to this cap to this down here. The purpose of this, some things you can just model straight onto a radial object like a sphere and, make all these changes the same across the whole object or cylinder. Um, so there's some techniques to get that done right, and that works for certain objects, but for other objects, like maybe this right here, or even these guys down here, these repeated patterned objects that go around the main object are more complicated or unique in terms of their topology. So it's a good idea for us to try to, if we can, work on getting this as to close as we can, or using this patterned duplicating technology, I guess, method for it. Okay. So in order to do this, I have two different versions of this same mesh just to illustrate different purposes or points, but both of them are starting from a base object that's going to be repeated. Okay, this topology of this object can theoretically be anything, right? It just needs to be able to be stitched back together, so these edges on either side that is going to be repeated have to line up with each other, right? Once it repeats. And you can see here, this is the same object, and I just did a essentially applied a repeating effect to it, and we'll talk about what that is on both of these. They have different topology, right? You can see this one's mostly a grid, and this one has fewer polygons, but it's definitely way more poles, right? And you'll see here on this topology, we talked a little bit about, or I've talked a little bit in class about how topology, especially on a curved surface, has a big effect on the appearance of that surface, especially when you smooth it out, right? This one over here is pretty darn good. It's about as good as you're going to get with this level of subdivision levels. If we added more edge loops going both ways, and if those edge loops were evenly spaced, we'd probably get a smoother result. But this is pretty good. This one over here, on the other hand, is way worse, right? You're seeing this like kind of stepping effect here. It's kind of getting these weird planes and flattening going on. And that's because of the topology. So we have a lot of poles here, right? So vertices with more than 4 sides attaching to them. There's a lot of 5-sided poles. There's probably more 5-sided poles than there are 2-sided poles, or 4-sided poles. So those poles have a lot of pull on the surface, and that's where we're getting these weird kind of warping and banding going on, right? So when I created this one over here, let's pull these guys towards the center so we can compare them. I'm going to turn on wireframe unshaded, right? And you can see what I did here was I created a grid on both of these cases. This one was a 3x7, right? Because I wanted to offset it. And then this one right here was let's see, it's a 6x3, 8, I think. Looks like 3, 6, 8, yeah. So it's a 6x8. And I was just looking at this mesh that he had here and seeing how it repeats, right? So we more or less have this kind of like little square option, right? If I wanted to, what I could have done is I could have made it more obvious in how, like, you can see there's like there's kind of like these 2 rows, this row here and this row here, and then there's a space, and then there's this row here, space. So what I could have done is I could have done something where I made sure that this right here, maybe I would do something like, let's go flat shaded mode, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to duplicate this, right? And then let's go ahead and I'm going to snap this duplicate over until it's overlapping, and I'm going to move this pivot point for it to here, and we'll snap it over one more time. All right, and I could get it so it's going to overlap like this, and so let me go ahead and get rid of these edge loops on this one. So we'll just go, let's make sure I'll isolate it. So I'm going to delete this part right here. I'm going to delete this half. Okay. I'll isolate that. I'm going to delete this half over here. And then on this one, I'm going to delete these faces. Right? And then I'm just going to stitch these guys together. Okay. So I'm going to go to, in order to combine them, I'm going to go to Mesh, Combine. And then I'm going to go to Edge, or then I'm going to select my mesh. And then what I'm going to do is, so when I combined it, it took two separate objects and made them one object, which will let me bridge things together and combine these two pieces of meshes together as if they were one object, right? So if I go into edit mode, I can see I have both of these objects in the same file, or in the same object. You can see they're not stitched together though yet, they're actually still disconnected. So what I'm going to do next is I'm going to go to Edit Mesh, Merge, and it's going to use a distance, and it's going to look in that distance to merge my mesh. So if I increase it, you can see if I go to higher numbers, you can see it's going to start going from each vertex and look nearby, and if there's a vertex within this distance threshold, it's going to grab it and merge it down into one, right? So I don't want anything too high, but you'll want to make sure that whatever you have is going to merge these pieces together, right? So let's set this to 0.01. There we go. You can see it grabs that vertex there and merged it. Okay, so let's try using this mesh for this one. Okay, so in order to get, there's two different methods you could do this. If you wanted a object that was, let me go ahead and also open another example on the desktop. Let me go to example, and while that's opening, there's two different ways we can do it. The first way is we can do essentially a smooth cylindrical radial object, right, which is what I created here. And another way we can make a radial object, using quotations here, or quotation marks, air quotes, is to, you can make something like a multi-sided cylindrical object, kind of like a hexagon or a pentagon or octagon, right? And I have some examples in this document. Let me go and pull these up. Okay, yep, that's fine. Okay, hide that, show this one. And you can see here I have, the smooth cylindrical radial object, and then I have the polyhedral radial object, which is like these faces are flat and it has a corner on them, right? And let's turn off the wireframe unshaded. So get very different approaches. But same concept, right? I'm kind of taking a really simple, a single instance of my pattern, right? And I am making sure the edges on the duplicated sides are going to line up, right? So in this object, since it's started from a plane, it's pretty easy, right? But you'll just definitely want to make sure that the edges on both sides that you're going to stitch together are going to line up, right? And so you can see here we got this radial object, and we have this polyhedral radial object. I think that, hope that's the right term. Okay, so the way this works is I'm going to start with the cylindrical radial object, the smooth one. And so I'm going to first create essentially a mesh like this. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to pull this down a little bit, just give myself a little space. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to use a tool called Duplicate Special. Okay, so Duplicate Special, you'll probably be aware of duplicating. You just go to Edit, Duplicate, right, or Control D. And when you do that, it creates an instance, or another duplicate of your object, not an instance. Duplicate Special does this for you, and it also applies a transformation to the duplicate, right? So you'll see if I click on this one right here, it's going to translate up in the y-axis one unit, and I'm making two more copies. So when I click Apply, you can see, wow, there we go. Made 2 copies, and each copy it shifted up 1 unit, right? So let's see. So what we're going to want to do is, let me go ahead and start with the vertical one, since I already have that kind of started up. So what I want to do is I want to look at my reference and figure out how many. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So there's if this right here is 1 unit, or 1 instance, or 1 copy right here. This is a second copy, and this is a third copy. So I need 3 total copies, and I already have 1, so I need to make 2 more. That's why I have 2 here. And what I want to do is I want to apply this translation to be as precise as I can get, so that the edges line up, right? So There's a gap here, so that's not going to work. So I'm going to come in here, press Control Z, come back out here, and I need to set this lower. So let's do 0.95. Okay. And we'll look at this, and you can see 0.95 is too little, right? Too much overlap, right? I need these edges, both of these copies, to overlap better. So click on my 3D viewport, press Control Z, and I'm going to do 0.97. Okay, still too little. Let's try just 0.99. Too much. Okay, so 0.98. All right, very close, a little bit more, so I'll do like 0.982. A little too much, 0.981. It doesn't have to be super, super precise. The more precise it is, generally works better. Okay, so that's good. And so now what I want to do is I want to grab these three. I could do this later, but I'm going to go ahead and do it now. These aren't combined into one mesh, right? So I need to combine them. So mesh, combine. And then they're not stitched together, right? If I go in here and I move a vertice, these aren't actually connected, even though when I turn on smoothing, it looks like they are, right? So what I need to do is I need to combine the touching vertices together. So I'm going to go to Edit Mesh, Merge, right? And I'm going to make sure my setting for that's pretty low, right? And let's make sure that this is connected. Yep. Okay, so that's connected, right? And so I have my vertical strip. Now I need to make my horizontal strip. So this will, again, require kind of taking a look at your mesh. So I can see this one is one. Let's see if these two right here is a single one. Or actually, I would say I'll just count by these ones. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Right, so that's 1/4 of this cylinder. So I'd say about 24. So the problem with this is it's going to have to, actually, no, we can just go for 24. Let's go ahead and do 24. So I already have one copy, so I need 23. Click apply. Oops, wrong direction. So I'm going to set the Y translation to be 0. I'm going to do the X translation to be pretty small, so 0.25. And I want 23 copies. Okay. So obviously that's not enough translation, so I'll do 0.4. Still not enough. 0.6. Okay, too much. So 0.55. Too much. 0.53. And just barely too little. 0.531. Still too little. 0.5315. Right. And so I'm getting kind of low, or pretty low on this. So, all right, so we have these copies. I'm going to grab these guys, mesh, combine. Okay, and then what I'm going to do is I'm going to go edit mesh, merge. Okay, so I want to merge all those border vertices. All right, and so now we have this repeated patterned mesh here. What I'm going to do is, you'll notice when I've been combining, I've been making a bunch of duplicates. Whenever I combine it, it leaves behind these ugly groups that essentially it's Maya trying to remember the history of your objects. You know, oh, I combined these two objects into a new object. I need to remember what these two objects were before. You don't need that, right? It's essentially Maya wants to have like this history to it so that you can go back and make tweaks, but most of the time that history when it comes to modeling is pretty useless, and if anything just makes errors more frequent, right? And you'll see if I delete one of these groups, you can see it starts to mess with my model, right? So I can't even clean this up. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to delete my history on my object. So I'm going to go edit, delete by type, history. Right? You'll see it deleted all those extra groups I didn't need. So there's some other ones lingering around, and it's not modifying my objects. And so my object's way more clean. Okay, so now what we're going to do is we're going to bend this around into a cylinder. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to my deform window right here. I'm going to go down to non-linear, and I'm going to choose the bend deform function. Okay, so it creates this handle, right? And you'll see when I open up the inputs for it and bring up the curvature, 180. Let's go ahead and do something less than that so you can kind of see it. So 120. You can see it's bending it in in this direction. So it's taking the vertical aspects of my object and pulling them radially this way, right? So obviously this is the right curvature, it's just the wrong direction. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to just rotate this bend handle, and I'm going to rotate it 90 degrees this way. So it's pointing backwards, which is good, but again, it's bending it this way, and I want to bend it this way, right? And let's rotate it along a different axis too. So I'll do 90 on that one. There we go. So that's looking good. Problem is, I need it to bend all the way around. So I'm going to set my curvature to 180 degrees, and you'll see that wraps all the way to the back side. Right? I'll have to merge this back faces in a second, but let's go ahead and take a look at, I'm going to assign a blend material just to check my shading, and it's pretty good. It's not bad. It's probably similar or comparable to this one, right, in terms of distortion. So I think that's good. I'm going to go ahead and delete my history, right, because the bend deformer, I can't delete this bend deformer because it's going to undo my work. So I'm going to grab my object, edit, delete by type history. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to go edit mesh, merge, and make sure it's stitching that back area up. Okay. And then, so what I could have done is I could have early on extruded back, like I need like a thickness to this, like these ones have right here. So I could have extruded back these holes, or I could just extruded this and then duplicated, but it's probably easier just keeping this flat. So a couple of options I have. One is just to do an extrusion on the whole mesh. So if I just extrude the whole mesh and translate it, the extrusion back a little bit, right? Because I'm extruding it inward, I'm now looking at the inside of the polygons. If I extrude the other way, I would see the outside of the polygons. But what I'm going to do is I can easily fix that by flipping my normals so that I'm not looking at the inside of the polygons. So I'll go to Mesh Display, Reverse, and I'll flip my normals, right? And then I can make these top edges sharper by applying a bevel, right? Because right now they're being pulled by these round edges right here, and so we're getting some like kind of funky distortion or wobbliness along the top edge, right? You can see that here, you see that? So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to select the top edge, do the same thing with the bottom edge, and I might just apply a bevel with a pretty small fraction, so like maybe I like 0.2. Okay, and those top edges are going to be a lot better. I could add another edge loop up there if I really needed to, right? So this is pretty good. Another thing I could do is I'm going to Control Z back before I extruded it. Right, is I could extrude or push back these holes. The problem is, oh no, I've already done this entire object. What the heck am I supposed to do now? I'm gonna have to Control Z back, push it back, and then reduplicate it and do the duplicate special and wrap it so that all of these holes have the exact same transformation. Or I have to select all of these guys, which is a pain in the butt, and move them back or scale them back, right? It's a huge problem. What I'm going to do actually is I'm going to select a single sphere or a circle, and then I'm going to go to select. It's a little trick. You can click similar, and what it's going to do is it's going to try to select all similar pieces of geometry on this object. You'll see I didn't get all of them, so I'll maybe select these guys as well and go select similar. There we go. Right, and you can see it selected all these circles for me, so that was really quick. And what I could do is I could scale these back in the Z and X axis at the same time, like that. I could extrude and then move that extrusion back in the X and Z at the same time, right? Then I could extrude and then, maybe offset these. Let's see if I can get this to go that way. There we go. I can do something like that, right? And it kind of does the same thing as extruding. The only problem is we have this kind of gnarly interior geometry that's not going to work, especially if you look through. You can see, oh, that's weird. Why are these like this? But that's a different way we could approach it. So keep that in mind when you're doing, oh, right. So talking about why this one works and this one doesn't. So on a curved cylindrical object, the edges are perpendicular to the curvature. So if my curvature is going this way, right? Is it going this way or along these lines in this direction? Perpendicular is this direction, right? And edges, if my edges are more or less linear and evenly spaced in this direction, as you can see here, you see these edges are pretty much evenly spaced from each other. They're almost straight. There's very little poles. There's poles, but they're very, very tight right here. So there's not a lot of pooling, and there's like an edge between them. So it's keeping it from pooling. You see these poles right here? They're not getting pulled too far. So these edges are staying pretty straight. And so that's what gives this one a fairly smooth surface compared to this one, right? This one, these edges are pretty straight, which is nice, but there's those poles are causing a lot of pooling, right? There's this really intense pull. They don't have like any spacing between them. I could add a space to it, right? I can maybe select this. It won't let me select all these edges, but let's say I'm just going to put a bevel here, right? So I can put a spacing in there, but the problem I'm going to run into is now I'm going to get like a kind of a divot right there, because these edges are no longer, or these faces are no longer evenly spaced, right? So we have these two are the same size, but this one's really crunched, right? And so it's starting to compress a lot. And this all has to do with, you know, the ways that your meshes are going to be smoothing with the smooth preview button turned on. And so that really is affected by how close edges are, right? You know, if two edges are close to each other and two other edges aren't, then they're going to look different. And then things like pulls and other modeling artifacts that cause a lot of pooling and distortion, right? And if I look at this example over here, that's that problem I'm running into right here, is on this cylinder, right? You can see there's some rippling going on the surface, and that's caused by these edges not being evenly spaced out, right? So because I modeled this one and I didn't pay attention to even spacing these edges out, or these faces out evenly, keeping them the same size, then I ran into this rippling effect, which is what's caused by an inconsistent spacing on those perpendicular edges. This one right here, I'll go ahead and do this example for the polyhedral radial object. This one's pretty easy. I don't really have to worry about the spacing of the edges in this case, because flat surfaces aren't really affected by you know, spacing of the edge loops as much, right? So even though this spacing is actually the spacing in this one's pretty consistent, but even if it was inconsistent, because it's a flat object, you wouldn't really notice it that much, right? I could probably add an edge loop right here, and it's really not going to show up at all, right? Because this is not a curved surface. Okay, so in order to do this, it's a slightly different approach. What I'm going to do is I'm going to do duplicate special, but we're not going to have to do a bend to the object. So we're just going to do, we only have to worry about duplicate special. I'm going to open it up. And so what's going to happen is I'm going to grab my pivot point for my object, and I'm going to snap it down to the left-hand side, I mean, it could be any side, of my strip or my single instance. And the reason why is when I duplicate this, I want to move it over. So I'm going to move it over here, and then I'm also going to rotate it, right? I'm going to rotate it like that. So by having it along that strip right there, or along that, having that pivot point around that edge right there, it's going to shift over, and then it's going to act like a hinge and then rotate like a little panel, okay? So that's what I did there. So let's just move that pivot point up. I'm pressing D to activate the pivot point and holding V to snap the pivot point to a vertex, okay? This one I'm going to want to figure out how many sides I want, and I'm going to make a number of copies and rotate them equal to how many sides I want, right? So if a circle is 360 degrees, then I'm going to divide the 360 degrees by how many sides I want. So if I want 20 sides, right, 360 divided by 20 is going to give me 18. So I'll have to do 360 degrees, or 20 copies, and I'm going to rotate each copy by 18 degrees, right? So 20 copies. I already have a copy, so I only need 19. So I need one less than I'm going for. And I'm going to rotate this 18 degrees. Click apply. And you'll see, there we go. It went ahead and duplicated those. And I would do the same thing I did with the other one, where I would just combine the meshes together and then use merge to weld the points together, right? I'm going to undo that. If I wanted a different number, like let's say I wanted far fewer, like let's say I just wanted 10 copies. So I'm going to make 9 more. So I need 10 sides, I only need 9 copies. And this is going to be 36, because 360 divided by 10 is 36 degrees. Click apply. See, much smaller circle, but, you know, far fewer sides. Okay. Same thing, I would merge these together, and I would go ahead and or I would combine them together and then use merge to weld them together. Okay. And so that's pretty much it. It's just keep in mind if it's going to be a curved surface that your topology matters. The spacing of these edge loops in the perpendicular direction, in this case vertical, is really important. Things like these holes are going to probably cause a lot of distortion, so it's a good idea to do a few tests. Make sure when I'm working on this, what I'll do is like you saw in my other file, I had a copy, right? So whenever I go to the next step, I'll like duplicate this, hide that duplicate, and then on this one, I'll go ahead and keep working on it. So if I mess up or I'm like, oh, this looks really gross, I need to go back and do something, I can easily find that previous mesh and just unhide it and then redo my work. Okay, so that's pretty much it for radial topology.